You would create campaigns like the one you just showed me, Eddie said. You would also work with our employees to make sure they understand and embrace our company values. You would be the voice of our culture. Marcus thought about this opportunity. It was a chance to use his marketing skills in service of something he now truly believed in. It was a way to help other people understand the lessons he had learned over the past 6 months. There's one condition, Eddie said, sitting back down. You would spend 1 week every month working in one of our locations. You would stay connected to the real work of our business and the people who do it. Marcus smiled. I would love that. I've learned that I do my best thinking when I'm working alongside the people who make this company successful. Eddie extended his hand. Welcome to your new position, Marcus. I believe you're going to do great work for us. As Marcus shook Eddie's hand, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. 6 months ago, he had been an arrogant man who looked down on others and thought he was better than everyone else. Now he was being trusted with an important job at a company he truly respected. Mr. Martinez, Marcus said, I want you to know that I will never forget the lesson you taught me. You could have destroyed my career, but instead you gave me a chance to become a better person. Eddie smiled. Everyone deserves a second chance, Marcus. The key is what you do with it. Marcus left Eddie's office feeling more excited about work than he had ever felt in his life. He had a job that would allow him to use his skills to make a positive difference in the world. He would be working for a man he respected and a company that shared his values. Over the following months, Marcus threw himself into his new role. He created marketing campaigns that celebrated the skills and dedication of Sterling Automotive Group's employees. He developed training programs that helped workers understand how their individual contributions fit into the company's larger mission. Marcus also spent time at different company locations, working alongside employees and listening to their ideas and concerns. He discovered that people had valuable insights that were often ignored by traditional management structures. One of Marcus's most successful initiatives was a customer feedback program that allowed people to share positive stories about their service experiences. These stories were shared throughout the company, recognizing employees who went above and beyond to help customers. Marcus also worked to change the company's hiring and promotion practices. He advocated for recognizing and advancing employees based on their character and work ethic, not just their formal education or background. After a year in his new position, Marcus received a letter that made him think about how far he had come. It was from Tony, the young mechanic who had taught him about oil changes and customer service during his first week in the field. Dear Mr. Sterling, the letter said, I wanted to thank you for recommending me for the management training program. I never thought someone like me could become a shop manager, but you believed in me and gave me the confidence to apply. I start my new position next month, and I promise to treat my employees with the same respect and fairness that you showed me. Marcus smiled as he read the letter. This was what real success looked like. Not just advancing your own career, but helping others grow and succeed as well. Marcus also maintained his relationship with Eddie Martinez, who had become both a mentor and a friend. They met regularly to discuss company strategy and culture, but they also talked about personal growth and the lessons they had learned from their own mistakes. You know, Eddie said during one of their conversations, that night when your car broke down was not the first time I had encountered someone who judged me based on my appearance. But it might have been the most important. What do you mean? Marcus asked. If you had been polite and respectful that night, I never would have known what kind of person you really were, Eddie said. I never would have had the opportunity to help you change and grow. Sometimes our worst moments create our best opportunities. Marcus nodded, understanding what Eddie meant. His moment of cruelty and prejudice had ultimately led to his transformation into a better person. It had also led to meaningful changes throughout the company, as Marcus worked to create a more respectful and inclusive culture. As Marcus drove home that evening, he thought about the journey that had brought him to this point. He was driving the same BMW that had broken down that rainy night 2 years earlier, but he was not the same person who had insulted Eddie Martinez in that small auto shop. Marcus had learned that true success was not measured by wealth or status, but by the positive impact you had on other people's lives. He had learned that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their job or background. Most importantly, Marcus had learned that it was never too late to change and become the person you were meant to be. All it took was the humility to admit your mistakes, the courage to do better, and the willingness to learn from people you might have overlooked before. When Marcus got home, Jennifer was waiting for him with dinner and a smile. Their relationship had grown stronger through his transformation, and she was proud of the man he had become. "How was your day?" Jennifer asked, just as she had asked every day for the past 20 years. But now Marcus's answer was different. Instead of complaining about difficult people or boring meetings, Marcus told his wife about the employees he had met, the problems he had helped solve, and the positive changes he was working to create. "I'm proud of you," Jennifer said, squeezing his hand. "You found work that really matters to you." Marcus smiled and squeezed her hand back. He had indeed found work that mattered, not just to him but to all the people whose lives he could touch through his efforts to create a more respectful and inclusive workplace. As Marcus went to sleep that night, he thought about Eddie Martinez and the gift he had been given that rainy evening 2 years ago. Eddie could have chosen revenge, but instead, he had chosen redemption. He could have destroyed Marcus, but instead, he had helped him rebuild himself into a better person. Marcus had learned that real leadership was not about power or control, but about helping others discover their potential and become their best selves. It was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life, and one he would pass on to everyone he had the privilege to work with and influence. The story that had begun with prejudice and arrogance had ended with understanding and respect. Marcus Sterling had discovered that the most important journey he could take was not to a better job or a bigger house, but to becoming a better human being. And that journey, he knew, would continue for the rest of his life. Marcus sat across from Eddie Martinez in the same chair where he had received his life-changing assignment 6 months earlier. But everything was different now. Marcus was different, and he could see that Eddie noticed the change immediately. "You look good, Marcus," Eddie said with a genuine smile. 6 months of honest work agrees with you." Marcus looked down at his hands. They were stronger now, with permanent calluses from months of physical labor. His face was more weathered, and his body was in better shape than it had been in years. But the biggest changes were not visible on the outside. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity," Marcus said. "I know I didn't deserve it, but I'm grateful for the chance to learn and grow." Eddie leaned back in his chair. "Tell me what you learned during these 6 months." Marcus thought carefully before answering. 6 months ago, he would have given a quick, confident response designed to impress his boss. Now he wanted to speak from his heart and tell the truth. "I learned that I was wrong about almost everything," Marcus said. "I thought success meant having expensive things and looking down on people who had less than me. I thought the work I did in an office was more important than the work other people did with their hands." Eddie nodded, encouraging Marcus to continue. "I learned that the people I look down on are actually the backbone of this company," Marcus said. "Tony taught me about customer service. Carol showed me how complex our operations really are. Janet helped me understand what it means to solve problems and take care of people." Marcus paused, thinking about all the people who had been patient with him during his learning journey. "Most importantly," Marcus continued, "I learned that real success is not about what you own or what title you have. It's about how you treat other people and whether you contribute something valuable to the world." Eddie smiled. "Those are important lessons, but learning them is only the first step. The question now is, what will you do with what you've learned?" Marcus had been thinking about this question for weeks. What did he want to do with the rest of his career? Where did he fit in this company now that he understood it so much better? "I want to use my marketing skills to help people understand what this company really stands for," Marcus said. "I want to create campaigns that show the dignity and value of the work our employees do every day." "That's interesting," Eddie said. "Can you give me an example?" Marcus pulled out a folder he had been working on during his free time over the past few weeks. "I've been developing ideas for a campaign called Real People, Real Service. It would feature actual employees telling their stories and explaining why they take pride in their work." Marcus opened the folder and showed Eddie some rough sketches and ideas he had put together. The campaign focused on the human side of the automotive service business, showing customers that they were dealing with skilled professionals who cared about their work. "I think people would respond to authentic stories," Marcus said. "Stories about mechanics who stay late to help a customer in need, or parts specialists who go the extra mile to find the right solution for someone's problem." Eddie looked through Marcus's ideas carefully. The campaign was thoughtful and respectful, showing employees as heroes rather than just workers. It was completely different from the flashy, superficial marketing that most companies used. "This is good work, Marcus," Eddie said. "It shows that you understand our values and our culture. But I want to ask you something personal. How has this experience changed you at home? How has it affected your relationships with your family and friends?" Marcus thought about this question. His relationship with Jennifer had grown stronger during the past 6 months. She had seen him struggle and grow, and she had supported him through the difficult transition. She was proud of the man he was becoming. "My wife has seen me become more humble and grateful," Marcus said. "I don't complain about small problems anymore. I appreciate what we have instead of always wanting more." Marcus also thought about his friends and colleagues. Some of them had been confused by his career change. Others had made jokes about him becoming a blue-collar worker. But Marcus no longer cared about impressing people who judged others based on their jobs or possessions. "I've also realized that some of my old friendships were not very healthy," Marcus said. "They were based on looking down on other people and feeling superior. I don't want to be that kind of person anymore." Eddie nodded approvingly. Change is never easy, especially when it requires admitting that your old ways of thinking were wrong. It takes courage to grow and become better. Eddie stood up and walked to the window overlooking the company's headquarters. "Marcus, I want to offer you a position as Director of Communications and Culture. You would be responsible for telling our company's story, both internally and externally." Marcus felt his heart race with excitement. This was more than he had dared to hope for. What would that involve? Marcus left Eddie's office feeling completely overwhelmed. His whole world had been turned upside down in the space of one conversation. The man he had mocked and belittled was now offering him a chance at redemption, but it would come at a great cost to his pride and comfort. As Marcus walked back to his desk, he noticed that his coworkers were looking at him strangely. Word had already started to spread about his special assignment, and people were curious about what it meant. "How did your meeting go?" Robert asked when Marcus sat down. Marcus looked at his friend and colleague. How could he explain what had just happened? How could he tell Robert that their new CEO was the same mechanic he had made fun of just a few days ago? "It went well," Marcus said carefully. "Mr. Martinez offered me a special project. I'll be working in different parts of the company for the next 6 months. Robert raised his eyebrows. "That sounds like a great opportunity. What kind of work will you be doing?" Marcus hesitated. "Learning the business from the ground up. Customer service, operations, that sort of thing." "Wow," Robert said. "That's unusual for someone at your level. You must have really impressed him." Marcus almost laughed at the irony. He had impressed Eddie all right, but not in the way Robert imagined. For the rest of the afternoon, Marcus tried to wrap up his current projects and prepare for his transition. He would be starting his new assignment on Monday morning at an auto repair shop across town. The thought of going back to that environment filled him with anxiety, but he knew he had no choice. When Marcus got home that evening, Jennifer was waiting for him with a smile. "How was your meeting with the new CEO?" "I've been thinking about it all day." Marcus sat down in his favorite chair and looked at his wife. She was so proud of his success and his career. How could he tell her that he was about to give it all up to work as a laborer in auto shops and warehouses? "The meeting was educational," Marcus said. "Mr. Martinez offered me a special assignment." Jennifer's eyes lit up. "That's wonderful. What kind of assignment?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I'll be spending the next 6 months working in different parts of the company, learning how the business operates from the bottom up." Jennifer looked confused. "But doesn't that mean you'll be leaving your current position? Will you still be doing marketing work?" "Not exactly," Marcus said. "I'll be working in shops and warehouses, learning about customer service and operations." Jennifer sat down across from him, her expression growing concerned. "Marcus, that sounds like they're demoting you. Are you in some kind of trouble?" Marcus wanted to tell her the truth, but he was too ashamed. "It's not a demotion. It's a leadership development program. Mr. Martinez believes that good managers need to understand every aspect of the business." Jennifer still looked worried, but she nodded. "Well, if you think it's a good opportunity, then I support you. 6 months isn't that long." That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about what was ahead of him. He had never done manual labor before. He had never worked directly with customers in a service environment. He was used to air-conditioned offices and business lunches, not greasy coveralls and dirty hands. Over the weekend, Marcus went shopping for work clothes. It felt strange to be buying coveralls and work boots instead of suits and dress shoes. As he stood in the store, he thought about Eddie Martinez and how he had looked that night at the auto shop. Now Marcus was going to dress the same way and do the same kind of work. On Monday morning, Marcus drove to Sterling Auto Service Center on the south side of town. It was similar to Eddie's original shop, but larger and more modern. As Marcus pulled into the parking lot, he saw several mechanics already at work, even though the shop had just opened. Marcus walked into the shop wearing his new coveralls and work boots. He felt completely out of place and uncomfortable. A woman in her 50s approached him with a clipboard. "You must be Marcus Sterling," she said. "I'm Linda Rodriguez, the shop manager. Mr. Martinez told me you'd be joining us for a few weeks." Marcus shook her hand. "Yes, that's right. I'm here to learn about the business," Linda smiled. "Great. Let me introduce you to the team and show you around." Marcus spent the morning learning about the different services the shop provided. He met mechanics, service advisors, and parts specialists. Everyone was friendly and professional, but Marcus could tell they were curious about why a corporate employee was working alongside them. "Your first assignment is to work with Tony in the oil change bay," Linda said. "It's a good place to start learning about customer service and basic automotive maintenance." Tony was a young man in his 20s who had been working at the shop for 3 years. He was patient and enthusiastic as he taught Marcus how to change oil, check fluid levels, and inspect vehicles for problems. "The most important thing is to treat every customer's car like it's your own," Tony said. "Whether they drive a beat-up truck or a brand-new luxury car, they deserve the same quality service." Marcus thought about his BMW and how Eddie had treated it with care and respect. Even though Marcus had been rude to him, now Marcus was learning the same values that Eddie had built his company on. The work was harder than Marcus had expected. By lunchtime, his back was sore and his hands were dirty. He was not used to being on his feet all day or working with his hands, but he was also surprised by how satisfying it felt to complete each job and see a customer drive away happy. During lunch, Marcus sat with the other employees in a small break room. They talked about their families, their hobbies, and their plans for the weekend. Marcus realized that these were good, hard-working people who took pride in their jobs. They were not the simple, uneducated workers he had imagined them to be. "How are you liking the work so far?" asked Maria, one of the service advisors. "It's different from what I'm used to," Marcus admitted, "but I'm learning a lot." "Mr. Martinez started in a shop just like this one," Maria said. "He worked his way up from the bottom. That's why he understands our business so well." Marcus nodded, thinking about how wrong his first impression of Eddie had been. Eddie had not been lucky or privileged. He had earned his success through hard work and dedication. In the afternoon, Marcus helped Tony work on a customer's car that was making strange noises. Tony diagnosed the problem quickly and explained to the customer exactly what needed to be fixed and how much it would cost. "We can have this done by tomorrow afternoon," Tony told the customer, "and I guarantee our work for 30 days. The customer was relieved and grateful. She had been worried that the problem would be expensive or complicated, but Tony had put her mind at ease with his honest explanation and fair price. "That's how we build customer loyalty," Tony explained to Marcus later. "We treat people fairly and do quality work. Word gets around and people come back." Marcus was beginning to understand that the success of Sterling Automotive Group was not built on fancy marketing campaigns or clever advertising. It was built on the simple principle of treating customers well and doing honest work. At the end of his first day, Marcus was exhausted. His expensive coveralls were dirty, his hands were stained with oil, and his whole body ached. But he had also learned more about customer service and business operations than he had ever learned in his corporate office. As Marcus drove home, he thought about Eddie Martinez and the lesson he was trying to teach him. Eddie could have fired him or humiliated him. Instead, he was giving Marcus a chance to understand what real success looked like. When Marcus got home, Jennifer was waiting with dinner ready. She looked at his dirty clothes and tired face with concern. "How was your first day?" she asked. "Harder than I expected," Marcus said honestly, "but educational." "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" Jennifer asked. "It seems like such a big change from your regular work." Marcus thought about her question. A week ago, he would have said no. He would have seen this assignment as beneath him. But now he was beginning to understand that there was dignity in all honest work, regardless of how clean or dirty it was. "I think it's exactly what I need to do," Marcus said. "Over the next few weeks, Marcus worked in different departments of the auto service center. He learned to change tires, replace brake pads, and perform safety inspections. He worked with customers who were frustrated, worried, and sometimes angry about their car problems. Marcus discovered that dealing with upset customers required patience, empathy, and genuine concern for their problems. He could not just dismiss them or look down on them. He had to listen to their concerns and work to find solutions. One day, an elderly man brought in a car that was barely running. The man was clearly struggling financially and was worried about the cost of repairs. Marcus watched as Tony carefully explained the problems and offered several options, including some less expensive alternatives that would keep the car running safely. "We want to help you find a solution that works for your budget," Tony told the man. "Your safety is the most important thing." Marcus realized that this was the same compassion and professionalism that Eddie had shown him that rainy night. Even though Marcus had been rude and condescending, Eddie had focused on solving his problem and getting him back on the road safely. Marcus barely slept that night. He tossed and turned thinking about Eddie Martinez and wondering if his new boss remembered him from the auto shop. Every time Marcus closed his eyes, he could see Eddie's face and hear his own cruel words echoing in his mind. When morning came, Marcus got dressed slowly. He stood in front of his mirror for a long time, trying to decide what to wear. Would his expensive clothes matter now? Would Eddie see right through his fancy appearance to the ugly person underneath? At breakfast, Jennifer noticed that Marcus was not eating. "Are you feeling okay? You seem worried about something." Marcus looked at his wife. How could he explain what he had done? How could he tell her that he had insulted and humiliated his new boss without even knowing who he was? "I'm just nervous about the changes at work," Marcus said. "New management always brings uncertainty." Jennifer reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're a good employee, Marcus. You work hard and you're smart. I'm sure everything will be fine." Marcus wished he could feel as confident as his wife sounded. But he knew that his job performance was not the problem. The problem was his character, and whether Eddie would judge him based on how he had acted that night. When Marcus arrived at work, the building was buzzing with activity again. There were more new faces in the hallways, and everyone seemed to be walking a little faster than usual. Change was in the air, and not everyone was comfortable with it. Marcus went to his desk and tried to focus on his work. He had several projects due this week, and he wanted to make sure everything was perfect. Maybe if he could show Eddie how valuable he was as an employee, it would make up for his terrible behavior as a customer. Around 10 o'clock, Marcus received an email that made his heart stop. It was from Eddie Martinez's office, requesting a meeting with Marcus at 2 o'clock that afternoon. The subject line simply said, "Introduction meeting, confidential." Marcus stared at the email for several minutes. This was it. Eddie had remembered him, and now Marcus was going to pay the price for his arrogance and prejudice. Marcus tried to work for the rest of the morning, but he could not concentrate. He kept checking the clock and feeling more nervous with each passing hour. He considered calling in sick and going home, but he knew that would only make things worse. At lunchtime, Marcus could not eat anything. His stomach was tied in knots and his hands were shaking. Robert noticed his distress and asked if everything was okay. "I have a meeting with the new CEO this afternoon," Marcus said. "I'm just nervous about making a good impression." "You'll be fine," Robert said. "Just be yourself." Marcus almost laughed at the irony. Being himself was exactly what had gotten him into this trouble in the first place. At 1:45, Marcus made his way to the executive floor. He had only been up there a few times before, and it felt strange to be walking through the carpeted hallways toward the corner office where Eddie was waiting. Marcus knocked on the door at exactly 2 o'clock. He heard Eddie's voice say, "Come in," and Marcus opened the door with trembling hands. Eddie was sitting behind a large desk wearing another expensive suit. The office was beautifully decorated with awards and photographs showing Eddie with various business leaders and politicians. It was clear that Eddie Martinez was an important and successful man. "Marcus, please have a seat," Eddie said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. His voice was calm and professional, just as it had been at the auto shop. Marcus sat down and tried to appear confident, but his hands were still shaking. He folded them in his lap and waited for Eddie to speak. "I wanted to meet with you because I've heard good things about your work here," Eddie said. Your supervisor tells me you're one of the top performers in the marketing department. Marcus was surprised. He had expected Eddie to immediately confront him about their previous meeting. Instead, Eddie was talking about his job performance. "Thank you, sir," Marcus said. "I try to do my best work." Eddie picked up a folder from his desk and opened it. "I've been reviewing your projects, and I'm impressed by your creativity and attention to detail. The campaign you developed for the Johnson account was particularly effective." Marcus felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe Eddie really did not remember him. Maybe he could get through this meeting without his past behavior being discovered. "I believe in recognizing talent when I see it," Eddie continued. "That's why I wanted to offer you an opportunity to work on a special project." Marcus leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of project?" Eddie closed the folder and looked directly at Marcus. "I want to create a new marketing campaign that highlights our company's commitment to customer service and respect for all people, regardless of their background or appearance." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. Those words seemed too specific to be a coincidence. Did Eddie remember him after all? "The campaign would focus on stories of real customer experiences," Eddie continued. "Times when our employees went above and beyond to help people in need. Times when we treated everyone with dignity and professionalism." Marcus tried to swallow, but his mouth was completely dry. He was beginning to understand that this was not a random assignment. Eddie knew exactly who he was and what he had done. "I think this campaign could be very powerful," Eddie said. "It could show people that success is not about how you look or what you drive. It's about how you treat others and the quality of work you do." Now Marcus was certain. Eddie remembered everything. The question was, what was he going to do about it? "Of course," Eddie continued. "To create an authentic campaign like this, the marketing team would need to really understand our values. They would need to believe in treating all people with respect." Marcus felt sweat forming on his forehead. He wanted to say something, but he did not know what words could possibly make the situation better. Eddie stood up and walked around his desk. He sat on the edge, looking down at Marcus with a calm expression. "You know, Marcus, I had an interesting experience last Tuesday night. My car broke down in the rain, and I had to stop at a small auto repair shop." Marcus felt like he was going to be sick. This was the moment he had been dreading. "The mechanic who helped me was very professional," Eddie continued. "He did excellent work for a fair price, but the customer he was helping that night was less than appreciative." Marcus could not look Eddie in the eye. He stared down at his hands and waited for the judgment that was surely coming. "This customer made assumptions about the mechanic based on his appearance," Eddie said. "He insulted him, looked down on him, and made fun of him to other people. He even posted about it on social media." Marcus finally found his voice. "Mr. Martinez," Eddie held up his hand. "Please let me finish. You see, that mechanic was me. I still work in my shop sometimes because I believe in staying connected to the business that built this company. I was helping out that night because one of my employees was sick." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. The full weight of his mistake was finally hitting him. He had not just insulted some random mechanic. He had insulted the CEO of a major corporation. He had insulted a man who had built a successful business through hard work and dedication. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. "I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything." Eddie nodded slowly. "Yes, you were wrong. But the question now is, what are you going to do about it?" Marcus looked up at Eddie, confused. "What do you mean?" "I could fire you right now," Eddie said. "I could tell everyone in this company about how you treated me that night. I could make sure you never work in this industry again." Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest. His career was hanging by a thread. "But that would not teach you anything," Eddie continued. "It would not help you become a better person. So instead, I'm going to give you a choice." Marcus waited, not daring to speak. "You can resign today and leave this company," Eddie said. "Or you can stay and learn what it really means to work hard and treat people with respect." Marcus was surprised by this offer. He had expected to be fired immediately. "What would I have to do?" Eddie smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "You would spend the next 6 months working in our various locations. Auto shops, parts warehouses, customer service centers. You would start at the bottom and work your way up just like I did." Marcus thought about this proposal. It would mean giving up his comfortable office job and getting his hands dirty. It would mean working with people he had always looked down on. It would mean admitting that everything he thought he knew about success was wrong. "If you choose to stay," Eddie continued, You'll learn about the real value of honest work. You'll understand what it means to serve customers and treat coworkers with respect. And maybe, at the end of 6 months, you'll be ready to come back to this office as a better man. Marcus looked around the elegant office, then back at Eddie. And if I refuse, then you leave today with a good recommendation and severance pay, Eddie said. No hard feelings. But you'll never know what you could have learned or who you could have become. Marcus sat in silence for several minutes, thinking about his options. He could take the easy way out and find another job at another company. He could continue living the way he always had, judging people and thinking he was better than everyone else. The founder and CEO of Sterling Automotive Group is here with us today, Mr. Davidson said. He wants to personally meet each of you and share his vision for our future together. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eduardo Martinez, CEO of Sterling Automotive Group. Marcus started clapping along with everyone else, but then he stopped. That name sounded familiar. Eduardo Martinez. Where had he heard that name before? A man in an expensive suit walked to the front of the room. He was in his 40s with graying hair and a confident smile. He looked successful and professional, exactly what Marcus expected from the CEO of a major company. But as the man got closer, Marcus felt his heart start to race. There was something familiar about his face, something about the way he moved and the shape of his eyes. Good morning, the CEO said into the microphone. Thank you all for the warm welcome. I'm Eduardo Martinez, but most people call me Eddie. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Eddie, the mechanic from the auto repair shop. But that was impossible. The mechanic had been wearing dirty coveralls and working with greasy tools. This man was wearing a $1,000 suit and commanding a room full of executives. I know some of you might be wondering about my background, Eddie continued with a smile. I started Sterling Automotive Group 20 years ago with a single repair shop. I worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, learning every aspect of the automotive service business. Marcus could not believe what he was hearing. The greasy mechanic he had insulted and looked down on was now his boss. Not just his boss, but the CEO of the entire company. Marcus felt sick to his stomach. I've always believed that success comes from treating people with respect and providing honest, quality service, Eddie said. These values have guided our company from the very beginning, and they will continue to guide us as we move forward. Marcus looked around the room. Everyone was listening intently to Eddie's words. They were impressed by his success story and inspired by his message. But all Marcus could think about was the terrible things he had said just a few nights ago. Eddie talked about his vision for the company and his plans for expansion. He spoke about creating opportunities for employees and maintaining the highest standards of customer service. He was articulate and confident, nothing like the simple mechanic Marcus had imagined him to be. I want each of you to know that your contributions are valued, Eddie said. This company succeeds because of the hard work and dedication of people like you. Together, we can build something even greater than what we have today. As Eddie spoke, Marcus remembered every insult he had thrown at him. He remembered calling him uneducated and unprofessional. He remembered posting on social media about the greasy mechanic who had fixed his car. He remembered telling everyone at the country club about how superior he was to people like Eddie. Marcus felt sweat beginning to form on his forehead. What if Eddie remembered him? What if he recognized Marcus as the rude customer from the auto shop? Marcus's career could be over before it even began. Eddie finished his presentation and opened the floor for questions. Several employees asked thoughtful questions about the company's future plans and opportunities for advancement. Eddie answered each question with intelligence and grace. Finally, Eddie said, I'd like to spend the rest of the morning meeting with different departments and getting to know all of you personally. I believe that successful leadership requires understanding the people you work with. The meeting ended and people began filing out of the room. Marcus tried to leave quickly, hoping to avoid any direct contact with Eddie. But as he reached the door, he heard someone call his name. Marcus Sterling? Marcus turned around and saw Eddie walking toward him. There was no escape now. Yes, that's me, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. Eddie extended his hand for a handshake. It's nice to meet you, Marcus. I look forward to learning more about your work here. Marcus shook Eddie's hand, searching his face for any sign of recognition. But Eddie's expression was completely professional. Either he did not remember Marcus, or he was choosing not to acknowledge their previous meeting. Thank you, sir, Marcus managed to say. I'm excited about the opportunities this acquisition will bring. Eddie smiled. I'm sure you are. We'll be conducting individual meetings with key employees over the next few weeks. I hope we'll have a chance to talk more then. Marcus nodded and quickly left the room. His hands were shaking as he walked back to his desk. He sat down and tried to calm himself, but his mind was racing with worry and fear. Robert came over to Marcus's desk. Wow, can you believe our new CEO started as a mechanic? That's an incredible success story. Marcus looked up at his friend. What do you mean? Didn't you hear his presentation? He started with one auto repair shop and built it into a huge company. That takes real vision and determination. Marcus felt even worse. Not only had he insulted his new boss, but he had completely misjudged who Eddie really was. Eddie was not some uneducated mechanic struggling to get by. He was a brilliant businessman who had built a multi-million-dollar empire. Are you okay? Robert asked. You look pale. I'm fine, Marcus lied. Just processing all this information. For the rest of the day, Marcus could barely concentrate on his work. He kept thinking about his encounter with Eddie and wondering if his job was in danger. He also kept thinking about all the people he had told his story to, including the social media post that was still online for everyone to see. During lunch, Marcus quietly deleted his social media post about the greasy mechanic, but he knew it was too late. Several people had already seen it and commented on it. The damage was done. As the day went on, Marcus heard more details about Eddie's background. He learned that Eddie had put himself through business school while running his first shop. He had expanded slowly and carefully, always maintaining high standards and treating employees well. He was known in the industry as a fair and honorable businessman. Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about success was wrong. He had assumed that successful people all looked and acted like him. He had never considered that someone could build a fortune while staying true to their roots and maintaining their values. By the end of the day, Marcus was exhausted from worry. He drove home in silence, no longer feeling excited about the acquisition. Instead, he was terrified about what the future might hold. That evening, Marcus sat in his expensive house and thought about his situation. He had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, trying to impress people with his clothes and his car and his attitude. But now he was working for someone he had looked down on and insulted. Marcus realized that he had learned an important lesson, but he was not sure if it was too late to matter. Eddie Martinez was everything Marcus pretended to be. Truly successful, truly powerful, and truly respected. And Marcus had treated him like garbage. As Marcus went to bed that night, he wondered if Eddie would give him a chance to prove himself, or if his prejudice and arrogance had already sealed his fate. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Marcus was no longer confident about his ability to handle them. Marcus woke up on Monday morning feeling excited. Today was the day his company would officially become part of Sterling Automotive Group. For weeks, everyone at Morrison Marketing had been talking about the acquisition. The rumors were flying about promotions, salary increases, and new opportunities. Marcus put on his best suit and his most expensive tie. He wanted to make a perfect first impression on the new executives. This could be the chance he had been waiting for to move up in the company. Maybe he could finally get that corner office he had always wanted. At breakfast, Marcus read the business section of the newspaper while drinking his coffee. There was a small article about Sterling Automotive Group's expansion into marketing and related services. The article mentioned that the company had grown from a single auto repair shop to a nationwide chain worth hundreds of millions of dollars. This is going to be big for us, Marcus told Jennifer as she poured him more coffee. Sterling Automotive Group is a major player. Being part of their company could open doors I never even imagined. Jennifer smiled at her husband. I'm proud of you, Marcus. You've worked hard for this opportunity. Marcus drove to work in his BMW, which was still running perfectly thanks to Eddie's repair work. But Marcus had already forgotten about that night. He was too focused on the future to think about some mechanic in a rundown shop. When Marcus arrived at the office, the parking lot was buzzing with activity. There were several expensive cars he did not recognize, and he could see people in suits walking around with clipboards and folders. The new management team was already here. Inside the building, Marcus could feel the excitement in the air. His co-workers were all dressed in their finest clothes, just like he was. Everyone wanted to make a good impression on their new bosses. Marcus went to his desk and checked his email. There was a message from the company president announcing an all-hands meeting at 10 o'clock. The message said that the new CEO of Sterling Automotive Group would be introducing himself to the staff and explaining his vision for the future. "This is it," Marcus said to his colleague Robert, who sat on the desk next to him. "This is our chance to show them what we can do." Robert nodded eagerly. "I heard the new CEO started with nothing and built this company from scratch. He must be incredibly smart and driven." Marcus spent the next hour preparing for the meeting. He reviewed all his recent projects and put together a quick presentation about his ideas for improving the marketing department. He wanted to be ready if anyone asked him about his work. At 9:30, Marcus made his way to the large conference room where the meeting would be held. The room was packed with employees from every department. Marcus found a seat near the front where the new executives would be sure to see him. The current company president, Mr. Davidson, stood up at the front of the room. "Good morning, everyone. As you all know, today marks the beginning of an exciting new chapter for our company. We are now officially part of Sterling Automotive Group, one of the most successful automotive service companies in the country." Everyone in the room applauded. Marcus clapped enthusiastically, already imagining how this change would benefit his career. Mr. Davidson continued, "Sterling Automotive Group was founded 20 years ago by a man who understood the value of hard work and honest service. Today, the company operates over 800 auto service locations across the United States and employs more than 15,000 people." Marcus was impressed by these numbers. He had no idea the company was so large. This was even better than he had expected. Eddie and Maria had taught their children that it did not matter what job someone had or how much money they made. What mattered was whether they were kind to others and worked hard to achieve their goals. The children had learned these lessons well. When Eddie got home, he could smell Maria's cooking before he even opened the front door. She had made his favorite meal, chicken with rice and beans. The whole house smelled wonderful. "How was work today?" Maria asked as Eddie washed his hands at the kitchen sink. "Pretty normal," Eddie said. "I fixed a BMW for a man who was stranded in the rain." Eddie did not tell Maria about the things Marcus had said to him. There was no point in repeating hurtful words that would only make her angry. Eddie had learned long ago that some people would always look down on others, and there was nothing he could do to change their minds. "Was he grateful for your help?" Maria asked. Eddie smiled. "I think he was more worried about his dinner plans than anything else." Sophia came into the kitchen carrying her math book. "Dad, can you help me with this algebra problem? I can't figure out how to solve it." Eddie sat down at the kitchen table with his daughter. The math problem was complicated, but Eddie understood it easily. He had always been good with numbers, which helped him run his business and understand how car engines worked. "Let's work through it step by step," Eddie said patiently. He showed Sophia how to break down the problem into smaller parts. Within a few minutes, she understood the solution. "Thanks, Dad," Sophia said. "You're really good at explaining things." Eddie hugged his daughter. "You're smart enough to figure out anything, Sophia. You just need to believe in yourself." Carlos came running into the kitchen, still wearing his soccer uniform. "Dad, guess what happened at practice today?" Eddie listened as his son told him about scoring a goal during a scrimmage game. Carlos was excited and proud, and Eddie was proud of him too. Not just because he had scored a goal, but because he was a good teammate who encouraged other players. During dinner, the family talked about their day. Sophia told them about a science project she was working on. Carlos talked about an upcoming soccer tournament. Maria shared news about her job at the local elementary school, where she worked as a teacher's aide. Eddie listened to his family and felt grateful for everything he had. He might not have a fancy house or expensive cars like Marcus, but he had something much more valuable. He had a family who loved him and respected him for who he was, not for what he owned. After dinner, Eddie helped Carlos with his English homework while Maria and Sophia cleaned the dishes. The homework was about writing a paragraph describing someone you admire.
Carlos wanted to write about his father.
"What should I say about you, Dad?" Carlos asked. Eddie thought for a moment. "Write about someone who works hard and treats people fairly. Write about someone who never gives up when things get difficult." Carlos wrote his paragraph carefully, describing his father as someone who helped people and built a successful business through hard work and honesty. When he finished, he read it out loud to the family. Eddie felt tears in his eyes as he listened to his son's words. This was real success. raising children who were proud of their father and who understood the value of hard work and kindness. Later that evening, after the children had gone to bed, Eddie sat on his front porch with Maria. They watched the rain stop and the clouds begin to clear. Stars were starting to appear in the dark sky. "You seem quiet tonight," Maria said. "Did something happen at work?" Eddie told her about Marcus and the things he had said. Maria listened without interrupting, but Eddie could see the anger in her eyes. "Some people think they're better than everyone else," Maria said when Eddie finished his story. "But they don't know what real value is." Eddie nodded. "I feel sorry for him more than anything else. He can't see past his own prejudices to appreciate the good things around him." "You fixed his car perfectly, didn't you?" Maria asked. "Of course," Eddie said. "I always do my best work no matter who the customer is." Maria took Eddie's hand. "That's why people respect you. That's why your business is successful. You treat everyone the same way." Eddie squeezed his wife's hand. She was right. His business was successful because people trusted him. They knew he would do good work for a fair price, whether they drove an expensive BMW or an old pickup truck. "Do you ever wish we had more money?" Eddie asked. "A bigger house? Fancier things?" Maria shook her head. "We have everything we need. Our children are healthy and smart. We have jobs we enjoy. We have each other. What more could we want?" Eddie smiled. Maria always knew how to put things in perspective. She reminded him of what was truly important in life. As they sat together on the porch, Eddie thought about Marcus driving home to his expensive house. Marcus probably thought he had won something by putting Eddie down, but Eddie knew better. The real winner was the person who could sleep peacefully at night, knowing they had done the right thing. Eddie had fixed Marcus's car with skill and care. He had charged a fair price and guaranteed his work. He had been polite and professional, even when Marcus was rude to him. That was the kind of person Eddie was, and that was the kind of person he would always be. Tomorrow would bring new customers and new challenges. Some would be kind and appreciative. Others might be like Marcus. But Eddie would treat them all with the same professionalism and respect. That was just who he was. Eddie stood up and helped Maria to her feet. It was time to go inside and get ready for bed. Tomorrow would be another day of honest work, and Eddie looked forward to it. Eddie Martinez stood in the doorway of his shop, long after Marcus drove away. The rain was still falling, but it was getting lighter now. Eddie watched the red taillights of the BMW disappear into the darkness. He had fixed hundreds of cars over the years, but encounters like this one always stayed with him. Eddie went back inside and began cleaning up his workspace. He put each tool back in its proper place, just like his father had taught him when he was a boy. "A messy workspace means messy thinking," his father used to say. Eddie had learned that lesson well. As he worked, Eddie thought about what Marcus had said to him. The words still hurt, even though he had heard similar things before. Some people looked at his clothes or his shop and decided they knew everything about him. They never bothered to learn who he really was or what he had accomplished. Eddie wiped down his workbench and thought about the conversation. Marcus had called him uneducated, but Eddie had gone to technical school for 2 years. He had also taken business classes at the community college at night, while working full-time during the day. He had studied hard and earned good grades in both programs. Marcus had made fun of his appearance, but Eddie wore work clothes because he worked with his hands every day. His coveralls got dirty because he was not afraid to crawl under cars and fix problems that other mechanics might give up on. His hands were stained because he worked hard to support his family and his business. Eddie looked at the certificates hanging on his wall. He had certifications from BMW, Mercedes, Ford, and several other car companies. He had to take tests and training courses to earn each one. The car manufacturers only gave these certifications to mechanics who proved they could do excellent work. But Eddie knew that Marcus had not bothered to look at any of those certificates. Marcus had made up his mind about Eddie based on how he looked and where he worked. Nothing Eddie could have said or shown him would have changed his opinion. Eddie finished cleaning his tools and sat down at his small desk in the corner of the shop. He pulled out a thick folder filled with thank you letters from customers. Over the years, hundreds of people had written to thank him for his honest work and fair prices. One letter was from an elderly woman whose car had broken down on her way to visit her sick husband in the hospital. Eddie had fixed her car quickly and only charged her for the parts, not for his labor. She wrote that his kindness had meant everything to her during a difficult time. Another letter was from a young father whose car had stopped working the day before his daughter's wedding. Eddie had stayed late to fix the car so the man could drive his daughter to the church. The father wrote that Eddie had saved one of the most important days of his life. Eddie had dozens of letters like these. People who appreciated his work. People who understood that he cared about doing the right thing, not just making money. These letters reminded him why he loved his job, even when he had to deal with customers like Marcus. Eddie put the letters away and looked around his shop one more time. It was not fancy, but it was his. He had bought this building 15 years ago when it was even more run down than it was now. He had worked weekends and evenings to fix it up, painting the walls and repairing the roof with his own hands. The shop might not look like much to someone like Marcus, but Eddie was proud of what he had built. He employed 3 other mechanics and provided good jobs for people in the neighborhood. He sponsored a Little League baseball team and donated money to the local food bank every Christmas. Eddie turned off the lights and locked the front door. As he walked to his car, he thought about Marcus's comments about success. Marcus thought success meant wearing expensive clothes and driving fancy cars, but Eddie had a different definition of success. To Eddie, success meant being able to support his family with honest work. It meant helping people when they needed help. It meant building something that would last and employing people who could support their own families. Eddie got into his car and drove through the quiet streets toward home. His car was 10 years old, but he kept it in perfect condition. He had rebuilt the engine himself and knew every part of it. The car would probably run for another 10 years with proper care. As he drove, Eddie thought about his family waiting for him at home. His wife Maria would have dinner ready even though it was late. His daughter Sophia would want help with her math homework. His son Carlos would want to tell him about soccer practice. Eddie smiled as he thought about his children. Sophia was 16 and wanted to be a doctor. She was getting excellent grades in all her advanced classes. Carlos was 14 and dreamed of becoming an engineer. Both kids worked hard in school and treated everyone with respect. Eddie and Maria had taught their children that it did not matter what job someone had or how much money they made. What mattered was whether they were kind to others and worked hard to achieve their goals. The children had learned these lessons well. When Eddie got home, he could smell Maria's cooking before he even opened the front door. She had made his favorite meal, chicken with rice and beans. The whole house smelled wonderful. Marcus sat in his BMW for a moment after Eddie closed the door. The engine was running perfectly now, just like Eddie had promised. The temperature gauge showed normal, and there was no more steam coming from under the hood. But Marcus was still angry about having to stop at such a rundown place. He pulled out his phone and called his wife again. "Jennifer, I'm finally leaving this awful place." "You won't believe what I just had to go through." "What happened?" Jennifer asked. "Is the car fixed?" "Yes, but barely," Marcus said, looking back at the small shop. "I had to get it fixed by some greasy mechanic in the worst part of town." The place was absolutely disgusting. Oil stains everywhere, old junk piled up, and the guy looked like he hadn't showered in days. Through the window of the shop, Marcus could see Eddie cleaning up his tools. Eddie was putting everything back in its proper place just like he did every night after work. "Well, at least you're okay," Jennifer said. "How much did it cost?" "Only $100, which is probably why the work is so cheap," Marcus replied. "You get what you pay for, right?" "I'm sure this fix won't last very long. We'll probably have to take it to the real BMW dealer next week." Marcus started driving toward the country club, but he was still upset about his experience. He hated that he had been forced to deal with someone like Eddie. In Marcus's mind, there were 2 types of people in the world: successful people like himself, and people like Eddie who would never amount to anything. As he drove through the rain, Marcus decided to call his friend Robert. Robert worked at the same company and would understand exactly how Marcus felt. "Robert, you're not going to believe what just happened to me," Marcus said when his friend answered the phone. "What's wrong?" Robert asked. "My car broke down in the absolute worst part of town. I had to get it fixed by this mechanic who looked like he crawled out from under a rock. The guy was covered in grease and could barely speak proper English." Robert laughed. "That sounds terrible." "Was he at least able to fix it?" "I guess so, but who knows for how long," Marcus said. "The whole place was falling apart. I felt like I needed a shower just from being there for an hour." Marcus was warming up to his story now. He liked having Robert's attention, and he enjoyed making fun of people who were different from him. And get this, Marcus continued. The guy claimed he owned the place.
Can you imagine?
This dirty mechanic thinks he's a business owner. He probably doesn't even understand basic business principles. Did you get his name? Robert asked. Eddie something, Marcus said. I wasn't really paying attention. People like that all seem the same to me. No education, no class, no understanding of how the real world works. Marcus was feeling better now that he was away from the shop and talking to someone who would agree with him. He liked to tell stories that made him look smart and important. You should have seen the way he dressed, Marcus said. Old dirty coveralls that probably hadn't been washed in months. And his hands were completely black. I don't know how people can live like that. Robert was laughing now. It sounds like you had quite an adventure. It wasn't an adventure, Marcus said firmly. It was a nightmare. I can't believe I had to depend on someone like that. Thank God I'll never have to see him again. When Marcus finally got to the country club, he was 45 minutes late. The Pine Valley Country Club was exactly the kind of place where Marcus felt comfortable. Everything was clean and expensive. The people who went there were successful and well-dressed. Marcus walked into the dining room and found his wife Jennifer sitting with Tom and Susan Johnson. They were all dressed in their finest clothes and drinking expensive wine. Sorry I'm so late, Marcus said as he sat down. I had the most incredible experience tonight. What happened? Tom asked. Marcus launched into his story again, but this time he made it even more dramatic. He described Eddie's shop as being even dirtier than it really was. He made Eddie sound even more unprofessional than he actually was. The place was absolutely filthy, Marcus said. There was junk everywhere and it smelled terrible. The mechanic looked like he hadn't had a decent job in his entire life. Susan shook her head. That sounds awful. Are you sure the repair will hold up? I doubt it, Marcus said. People like that don't understand quality work. They just do whatever is cheapest and hope for the best. Marcus was enjoying the attention he was getting from his story. He liked being the center of attention, and he liked making other people feel superior to people like Eddie. The funniest part, Marcus continued, was that he actually thought he was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful to him for helping me. He has no idea what real success looks like. Jennifer looked a little uncomfortable. Well, at least he was able to help you when you needed it. But Marcus was not interested in being fair to Eddie. Help? He probably made more money from me tonight than he usually makes in a week. I was doing him a favor by stopping there, Tom laughed. I can't imagine having to deal with someone like that. We're lucky we don't have to interact with those types of people very often. Exactly, Marcus said. That's why I work so hard to be successful. So I can avoid situations like that. So I can choose who I deal with and where I spend my time. After dinner, Marcus felt much better. He had turned his frustrating experience into an entertaining story that made him look good and made his friends laugh. He had forgotten all about how professional Eddie had been, or how quickly and fairly he had fixed the car. Later that evening, when Marcus got home, he decided to post something on social media. He wanted to share his experience with all his friends and followers. Marcus took out his phone and opened his social media app. He thought for a moment about what to write, then typed, "Had to get my BMW fixed tonight at some rundown garage in the bad part of town." The mechanic looked like he hadn't showered in weeks. Thank goodness for insurance that will cover a real repair when this cheap fix fails. Some people really don't understand quality work. Blessed your success, your BMW, Marcus posted the message and put his phone away. He felt satisfied that he had shared his story with the world. He imagined all his friends and colleagues reading it and agreeing with him. What Marcus did not know was that several people who saw his post felt uncomfortable with it. Some thought he was being mean to someone who had helped him. Others wondered why he was making fun of someone who worked hard for a living. But Marcus did not care about any of that. In his mind, he was simply sharing the truth about his experience. He believed that people like Eddie deserved to be looked down upon because they had not achieved the same level of success that he had. The next morning, Marcus woke up and checked his phone. His post had gotten several likes and a few comments from friends who agreed with him. This made him feel even better about what he had written. Marcus got dressed in one of his most expensive suits and drove his perfectly running BMW to work. The car ran smoothly all the way there, thanks to Eddie's expert repair work. But Marcus did not think about that. He was already planning what he would tell his coworkers about his experience. At work, Marcus gathered several colleagues around his desk and told them the story again. Each time he told it, he made Eddie sound worse and the shop sound more terrible. "You should have seen this place," Marcus said to his co-workers. "It was like something out of a movie about poverty. And the mechanic was exactly what you'd expect. Uneducated, unprofessional, and completely out of his league." His co-worker Sarah listened to the story, but did not laugh like the others. "It sounds like he did good work, though," she said. "Your car is running fine and he charged you a fair price." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "Sarah, you don't understand. It's not just about whether the car runs. It's about the whole experience. It's about dealing with professionals who understand quality and customer service." But Sarah was not convinced. Maybe the man was just doing his job and trying to help you. Marcus looked at Sarah like she had said something crazy. "Help me, please. People like that are lucky to get customers like me. I probably made his whole week by stopping there." The other co-workers laughed and agreed with Marcus, but Sarah walked away, feeling uncomfortable with the whole conversation. Throughout the day, Marcus continued to tell his story to anyone who would listen. He told it to people in the elevator, to clients on the phone, and to his secretary. Each time he made himself sound more important and Eddie sound more pathetic. By the end of the day, Marcus had told the story so many times that he almost believed his own exaggerated version. In his mind, Eddie had become a symbol of everything that was wrong with people who did not work hard enough to achieve success. Marcus drove home that evening in his perfectly running BMW, never once thinking about the skilled work that Eddie had done to fix it. He never considered that Eddie might be a good person who worked hard and treated customers fairly. In Marcus's world, people were either successful like him, or they were failures like Eddie. As Marcus pulled into his driveway at his expensive house, he felt proud of himself for sharing his story with so many people. He believed he had taught them an important lesson about the difference between successful people and everyone else. Marcus followed Eddie back into the small shop, shaking the rain off his expensive coat. He looked around again at the dirty floors and old equipment. Everything about this place made him feel uncomfortable. He was used to much nicer places with clean waiting rooms and friendly staff. Eddie went to a shelf and pulled down a box. He opened it and showed Marcus a black rubber hose. "This is what we need to replace," Eddie said. "Your old one has a crack in it. That's why all your coolant leaked out." Marcus looked at the part and frowned. "How do I know this is the right quality? My car needs the best parts, not some cheap replacement." Eddie stayed patient. "This is a good quality part, sir. It's the same brand that BMW uses. I've installed hundreds of these and they last for years." But Marcus was not convinced. He looked at Eddie's dirty clothes and rough hands. How could someone who looked like this know anything about expensive cars? Marcus had always believed that you could tell how smart and successful someone was by how they dressed and where they worked. "Look," Marcus said, "I need to be sure about this. Can I speak to the real mechanic? The one who owns this place?" Eddie looked confused. "I am the owner, sir. This is my shop. I started it 15 years ago." Marcus laughed. "You own this place? I find that hard to believe. Where did you go to school? Do you have any certificates or training?" Eddie's face got a little red, but he kept his voice calm. "I went to technical school for 2 years. I've been certified by several car companies. I have all my licenses hanging on that wall over there." Marcus looked at the wall and saw several framed certificates, but he did not bother to read them. He had already made up his mind about Eddie. In Marcus's world, successful people wore suits and worked in clean offices. They did not get their hands dirty or work in places like this. "I guess I don't have much choice," Marcus said with a sigh. "But I want to watch everything you do. And if you damage my car in any way, I'll hold you responsible." Eddie nodded. "Of course, sir. You're welcome to watch. Let me get my tools and we'll get started." Marcus pulled out his phone and called his wife. "Jennifer, it's me. I'm going to be even later. My car broke down in some terrible part of town. I'm stuck at this dirty garage with some mechanic who barely speaks English properly." Eddie heard everything Marcus said, but he did not say anything. He just gathered his tools and went back outside to work on the car. Marcus followed him and stood under a small roof to stay dry. He watched as Eddie carefully removed the broken hose. Eddie worked quickly but carefully, making sure not to damage anything else in the engine. "You know," Marcus said loudly, "I usually take my car to BMW of downtown. They have a beautiful showroom and trained technicians. Not like this place." Eddie kept working and did not respond. Marcus continued talking. The people there wear clean uniforms and know how to treat customers properly. They have leather chairs in the waiting room and serve free coffee. It's a completely different experience. Still, Eddie said nothing. He focused on his work, carefully fitting the new hose into place. Marcus was getting more annoyed that Eddie was ignoring him. He was used to people listening when he talked. At work, people paid attention to everything he said. His employees always agreed with him and laughed at his jokes. "I bet you've never even been in a place like that," Marcus said. "You probably don't know what real customer service looks like." Eddie finally looked up. "I'm just trying to focus on fixing your car, sir. I want to make sure I do it right." But Marcus was not satisfied with this answer. He wanted Eddie to know exactly what he thought about him in this place. "Let me guess," Marcus said. "You probably live in some small apartment around here. You probably shop at discount stores and eat fast food every night. Am I right?" Eddie's hand stopped moving for just a second, but then he continued working. "I just want to fix your car and get you back on the road, sir." Marcus laughed again. "See, I knew it. You people are all the same. No ambition, no goals. Happy to just get by with the minimum." Eddie tightened the clamps on the new hose and stood up. "Let me add some coolant and we'll test it out." Marcus watched as Eddie poured bright green coolant into the radiator. "I hope you're using the right type. My car requires a specific kind of coolant, not the cheap stuff." "It's the correct type," Eddie said quietly. Eddie started the engine and let it run for a few minutes. The temperature gauge stayed normal. No steam came out from under the hood. The repair was working perfectly. "There you go," Eddie said. "Your car is fixed. The engine is running fine and your temperature is back to normal." Marcus looked surprised. The repair had only taken 45 minutes and the car sounded great. But instead of being grateful, Marcus was suspicious. "How do I know this will last?" Marcus asked. "What if it breaks again tomorrow?" Eddie wiped his hands on his rag. "I guarantee my work for 30 days. If you have any problems with this repair, bring it back and I'll fix it for free." Marcus walked over to his car and looked under the hood. Everything looked good, but he did not want to admit that Eddie had done a good job. "I guess it will have to do," Marcus said. "How much do I owe you?" $100, just like I said," Eddie replied. Marcus pulled out his wallet. He had plenty of cash, but he counted out the money slowly, as if paying $100 was a big problem for him. "You know," Marcus said, "at a real shop they would have given me a detailed estimate first. They would have explained everything they were going to do. They would have treated me with respect." Eddie took the money and went inside to write up a receipt. Marcus followed him and continued talking. "I mean, look at this place. It's falling apart. The equipment is old. Everything is dirty. How can you expect people to trust you with their expensive cars?" Eddie handed Marcus the receipt. "Is there anything else I can help you with tonight, sir?" Marcus looked at the receipt. Eddie had charged him exactly what he said he would. There were no hidden fees or extra charges, but Marcus was still not satisfied. "Let me give you some advice," Marcus said. "If you want to be successful, you need to improve your image. Clean up this place. Get some decent clothes. Learn how to talk to customers properly. People like me have standards." Eddie walked toward the door. "I hope your car serves you well, sir. Drive safely in this rain," but Marcus was not done yet. He wanted to make sure Eddie understood exactly where he stood in the world. "You should be grateful for customers like me," Marcus said. "We're the ones who keep places like this in business. Without people like me, you'd have nothing." Eddie opened the door for Marcus. "Have a good evening, sir." Marcus walked out to his car, still talking. "I'm going to dinner at the Pine Valley Country Club now. Do you know what that is? It's where successful people go, where people who have made something of themselves spend their time." Eddie stood in the doorway, watching Marcus get into his BMW. "Maybe someday you'll understand what it means to really succeed in life," Marcus called out through his car window. "But I doubt it. Some people just know their place." Eddie watched as Marcus drove away into the rain. The BMW was running perfectly. The repair would last for years. But Eddie knew that Marcus would never appreciate the quality of his work or the fairness of his price. Eddie went back inside his shop and cleaned up his tools. He had been working on cars for 25 years. He had fixed thousands of vehicles and helped thousands of customers. Most people were grateful for his help. But sometimes he met people like Marcus who thought they were better than everyone else. Eddie looked around his small shop. It was not fancy, but it was his. He had built his business from nothing, working 16 hours a day for years. He took pride in his work and treated every customer fairly. He knew that real success was not about what clothes you wore or what car you drove. It was about working hard, being honest, and helping people. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Eddie turned off the lights and locked up his shop. Tomorrow would bring new customers and new challenges. Some would be kind and respectful. Others would be like Marcus. But Eddie would treat them all the same way, with honesty and fair prices. As Eddie walked to his own car, he thought about what Marcus had said. The man had no idea who he really was or what he had accomplished. But that was okay. Eddie had learned long ago that the most important thing was not what other people thought about you. It was what you thought about yourself. Eddie got into his car and drove home through the rain. His car was older and not as fancy as Marcus's BMW, but it was reliable and paid for. And unlike Marcus, Eddie never looked down on anyone because of what they drove or where they worked. The rain was finally starting to slow down as Eddie pulled into his driveway. He sat in his car for a moment, thinking about the evening. He had helped someone who needed help. He had done good work for a fair price. That was enough for him. Eddie went inside his house and washed his hands. Tomorrow he would be back at the shop ready to help whoever needed him. Whether they treated him with respect or not, he would do his best work. That was just who he was. Marcus Sterling looked at his gold watch and shook his head. He was already 30 minutes late for dinner at the Pine Valley Country Club. His wife Jennifer would not be happy. She had planned this dinner for weeks with the Johnsons, and Marcus knew how important it was to her. The rain was getting heavier now. Big drops hit his windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. Marcus turned up the heat in his black BMW and pressed harder on the gas pedal. He needed to get to the club as fast as possible. Marcus worked as a marketing director at a big company downtown. He made good money and lived in a nice house in the best part of town. He wore expensive suits and drove expensive cars. People looked up to him, and he liked it that way. The rain was coming down so hard now that Marcus could barely see the road. He was driving through a part of town he had never been to before. The buildings looked old and tired. The streets had holes in them. This was not the kind of place where people like Marcus usually went. Suddenly, Marcus heard a loud noise from under the hood of his car. It sounded like metal hitting metal. Then he saw white steam coming out from the front of his BMW. The temperature light on his dashboard started flashing red. Marcus felt his heart sink. His beautiful car was breaking down, and he was in the worst possible place for this to happen. He looked around and saw old buildings, empty lots, and broken streetlights. There were no fancy car dealerships here. No clean repair shops with nice waiting rooms. The engine started making even louder noises. Marcus knew he had to stop driving or he would make things worse. He pulled over to the side of the road and turned off the engine. Steam was still coming out from under the hood. Marcus took out his phone and tried to call his regular mechanic. But it was Tuesday evening and the shop was closed. He tried calling a tow truck, but they said it would take 2 hours to get to him because of the rain. Marcus sat in his car for a few minutes, watching the rain hit his windshield. He was angry and frustrated. This was not how his day was supposed to go. He had important people to meet. He had a reputation to keep up. Then he saw a light down the street. It was coming from a small building with a sign that said, Eddie's Auto Repair. The sign was old and some of the letters were not working, but it was the only place that looked open. Marcus drove his car slowly toward the light. The engine made terrible noises with every turn of the wheels. More steam came out from under the hood. He was worried that his expensive car was getting damaged. When he got closer to the shop, Marcus could see that it was not the kind of place he was used to. The building was small and looked very old. The paint was peeling off the walls. There were old car parts lying around the parking lot. A few beat-up cars were parked outside. Marcus parked his BMW next to an old pickup truck that had rust spots all over it. He looked at the shop again and wished he was anywhere else. But he had no choice. He needed help, and this was the only place open. He turned off his car and the engine made one last loud noise before going quiet. Marcus sat there for a moment, not wanting to get out. He was wearing his best suit and his most expensive shoes. He did not want to get dirty in a place like this. The rain was still coming down hard. Marcus knew he would get wet if he stayed outside for too long. He took a deep breath and opened his car door. The cold rain hit him right away and he ran toward the shop as fast as he could. The front door of the shop was open, but Marcus could not see anyone inside. He could hear the sound of tools and someone working on a car. There was also music playing softly in the background. Marcus stepped inside and looked around. The shop was small and cramped. There were tools everywhere. Car parts were stacked on shelves that reached the ceiling. The floor was dirty and had oil stains all over it. The air smelled like motor oil and gasoline. This was nothing like the clean, modern car dealership where Marcus usually took his BMW. That place had comfortable chairs, free coffee, and people in clean uniforms who called him sir and treated him with respect. Marcus heard someone working under a car in the back of the shop. He cleared his throat loudly and called out, "Hello? Is anyone there? I need help with my car." The sound of tools stopped. Marcus heard someone sliding out from under a car. Then he saw work boots, dirty pants, and finally a man standing up and wiping his hands on a rag. The man looked to be in his 40s. His hair was starting to turn gray. His clothes were old and covered with grease and oil stains. His hands were black from working on cars all day. Marcus looked at the man and immediately felt uncomfortable. This person did not look like the kind of mechanic who should be working on his expensive BMW. Marcus was used to dealing with people who wore clean uniforms and spoke with proper grammar. The man walked toward Marcus with a friendly smile. "Hi there," he said. "I'm Eddie. What can I do for you tonight?" Marcus looked Eddie up and down. He noticed the man's accent and the way he talked. Marcus decided right away that this person was not smart enough or good enough to work on his car. "My car broke down outside," Marcus said in a cold voice. "It's a BMW, a very expensive one. I need someone who knows what they're doing." Eddie nodded and kept smiling. "I've worked on plenty of BMWs before. Let's go take a look and see what's wrong." Marcus followed Eddie outside into the rain. They walked over to his black BMW, which still had steam coming out from under the hood. Eddie lifted the hood and looked inside. He examined the engine carefully, touching different parts and checking fluid levels. Marcus watched him and felt more worried with each passing minute. "Well," Eddie said after a few minutes, "it looks like your radiator hose is broken. That's why you're losing coolant and your engine is overheating. It's not too serious, but you definitely can't drive it like this." Marcus crossed his arms and frowned. "How much is this going to cost me? And how long will it take?" Eddie thought for a moment. "I have the part you need in stock. It'll cost about $60 for the part and $40 for the labor. I can have it fixed in about an hour." Marcus could not believe what he was hearing. $100 seemed way too cheap. At his regular dealership, this kind of repair would cost at least $300. Marcus was sure that Eddie was trying to trick him somehow. "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" Marcus asked. "This is a very expensive car. I can't have some amateur messing around with it." Eddie's smile got a little smaller, but he stayed polite. "I've been fixing cars for 25 years, sir. I know what I'm doing. But if you'd rather take it somewhere else, I understand." Marcus looked around at the empty street. There was nowhere else to go. All the other shops were closed, and he was getting wetter by the minute. He had no choice but to trust this man, even though everything about the situation made him uncomfortable.